Kristine Braden, can you tell me, why does Citigroup have to be in Switzerland? What are you doing here that you can't do in another jurisdiction?
That's a great question. I think from our perspective, there's a few different reasons we're here. The first one is in our corporate and investment bank, we believe in serving our clients on the ground and being close by so that at any moment we can basically go to our clients' offices. And we think it's a really distinguishing factor for our business. Secondly, the investor business here is really big for us. So our equity sales, our fixed income sales, foreign exchange, we believe having people on the ground in Switzerland makes a difference. And lastly, I would say in our private bank, making sure that we actually have clients that can serve our clients from here, but for all over the world, it's important to know what's happening on the ground.
So of those three businesses that you mentioned, which are sort of the most attractive in Switzerland?
Actually, all of them are doing fine. So in the last year, from an equity sales perspective, fixed income, and our foreign exchange, we were top 3 in the country. We're really proud of that fact. Our private bank continues to grow strongly, and that's both from foreign demand as well as from domestic family office business. And then in terms of what we do from a corporate investment banking perspective, there's so much activity among our corporates at the moment and our financial institutions clients that we continue to, be very proud of the ability to serve them here in Switzerland.
Okay. Now you've been here for 3 years running Citigroup in Switzerland, and I think that's probably long enough to become a little bit of a go-between or an interpreter to the local industry. And you're also active in a couple of associations and trade bodies. I'd be really curious to know, is there any sort of insights that you've been able to bring to those, to that industry here on the ground?
Yeah, I think of it in 3 ways. I think firstly, from a digital perspective, globally, things are changing so fast, and I think the challenge for Switzerland is to figure out what role it plays in that new ecosystem, how it becomes competitive from a financial services perspective in the new economy, but also how, digital is borderless. The things that used to make Switzerland competitive will change in the future. And so I think that's one huge area which Switzerland is thankfully actually spending a lot of time on, both at the individual bank level as well as the government level. The second, I would say, which is related to that, is cybersecurity. Because we're in a digital world, cybersecurity is really, the modern problem. And so, again, thinking borderlessly about that issue, I think is really important for the industry here. And then lastly, and maybe even more important than those other two, is Switzerland used to have a lot of customers coming into the country. Now Switzerland needs to go out. And of course, lots of the private banks are realizing this and are actually buying portfolios overseas, et cetera. Obviously, Citi's always been a global player, and one of the things we hope to bring is just that global perspective into this market.
Switzerland is obviously really trying to be at the forefront of, as you mentioned, the digital agenda as well, spending a lot of time and money, and there's also a lot of government attention on that too. You have a lot of experience in Asia and also in other parts of the world. How do you think Switzerland sort of ranks in its efforts in terms of digital?
Actually, relatively well. So I think in terms of, for example, establishing a pretty innocuous fintech regulatory environment, starting to develop fintech bridges with other countries, right, and agreements. So recently there was one with Israel, for example. I think the activity levels are really good, and I'm excited to see the degree to which the government particularly is putting its weight behind this issue, partially just to understand what's happening, but then also to make sure that we're not in a competitive, disadvantageous position. So I think that's really good. I think, in terms of the banks themselves getting their heads around it, frankly, everyone is working on this. And certainly where you have new competitors like the Googles, the Apples, the Facebooks of the world coming into the banking sector, I think this will obviously be one of those things that the financial services industry here in Switzerland has to be ready to defend itself against, but also to find new ways to collaborate, right? One of the things that's really changing the financial services industry is that we used to just compete. And now actually, because it's such a fast-changing environment, collaboration is actually the name of the game to get ahead.
Is the local industry doing enough in that respect?
It's starting to. And pretty much any day of the week you can see a new agreement has been struck. And a lot of it is what we would call experimentation. I mean, when was the last time you heard about experimentation in the banking industry? And I think that's really exciting. So whether it's, you know, a blockchain consortium, or it's acquisition of a fintech, or embedding robo-advisory into existing online banking systems, I think there's a multitude of different activities underway. I think the big question on everyone's mind is what's going to be the winning formula? And nobody quite knows that yet. And so actually the experimentation is exactly what has to happen in order to figure it out. And it's a little bit like Chairman Mao's, let 1,000 flowers bloom, because nobody's quite sure where this is all going to end up. But I think it's incredibly exciting.
Good point. I also wanted to ask you about something close to my heart, and that's you're obviously one of the highest ranking women in Swiss finance, one of the very few CEOs of a financial firm in Switzerland. There's been a couple of studies that show that Switzerland lags Europe, but also the States in terms of diversity, especially in finance management. Why is that, and what can we do about it?
I think there's a lot of reasons that we're behind here in Switzerland, and it is a fact. So if you look at the Economist Glass Ceiling Index, I think we rank 26th, which is just between sort of Turkey and Japan, which is not great company in this area. And if I would say that there's one thing that does need to change to keep Switzerland competitive, it is diversity in its management. Because in this new economy, we absolutely need diversity of thought, right? The old ways of doing business may just not be very relevant anymore, the winning factors. And so bringing in new ideas is going to be really important. And it takes diversity to do that. Not just gender diversity, but diversity of all kinds. Why are we behind? I think there's a very strong culture here in Switzerland, but there's also what I would call systemic roadblocks. So for example, the fact that children go home for lunch and they're home on Wednesdays half day means it's very hard, with the high cost of childcare in this country, for women to continue to stay in the workforce. That said, when I go out into management here and meet people from the other banks, I am seeing a brand new crop of very senior, very competent women taking center stage, and I'm really excited to see them continue to rise up, and I think this is our moment.
That's a very encouraging note to end on. Thank you very much, Kristine Braden.
Thank you so much.